Hey, it's Larry. Thanks for listening. Happy New Year. Real quick, before we get into this episode, I had such an amazing, eye-opening, life-changing experience at the World Parkinson Congress in Kyoto that I want others to have that opportunity too. So Becca Miller and I and 24 of our PD community friends have launched a year-long WPC travel grant fundraiser. We're each doing a 2-week Facebook fundraiser. Mine's underway right now because my birthday's January 9th. All the money raised will be used to help offset travel costs so more people with young onset Parkinson's can attend the next WPC in Barcelona in 2022. You can search out details on the When Life Gives You Parkinson's Facebook page or donate directly to the WPC website. Go to wpc2022.org/YOPD fund. If you or your business would like to supply matching funds, hey, good on ya. Email me at parkinsonspod@curiouscast.ca. And now, on with the show. Hello, it's Larry Gifford with Niki Reitmeyer.
I want to say thanks to everybody who's listened and subscribed to When Life Gives You Parkinson's.
We're going to release a full episode every other Wednesday, and in between a shorter, more conversational-focused episode like this called Extra Dosage.
I like the idea of extra dosage. It's cool to be able to add a little bit more audio that we couldn't fit into the bigger, longer episodes that people can check out in these little mini versions of When Life Gives You Parkinson's.
They're easier to swallow.
Yeah, and it gives us a chance to play portions of interviews or provide additional context and answer some of the listener questions that come our way too.
Yeah, I'm hoping people email us at parkinsonspod@curiouscast.ca. Today, I want to introduce you to a guy who said to me, yeah, you got Parkinson's. His name is Dr. Jonathan Squires. He's a neurologist at UBC's Brain Health Center. I started by asking him, well, why is this such a hard disease to diagnose?
So, despite the fact that Parkinson's was first described a little over 200 years ago now, the diagnosis still remains clinical. So there's, old men with gray hair and slightly younger women with slightly less gray hair meet periodically and come up with, these are the diagnostic criteria for Parkinson's disease based on the evidence that they've accumulated over time. But the diagnosis still rests on the story that the patients tell and the findings that we find on physical exam. And then looking for other things that aren't typical of Parkinson's disease that might suggest an alternative diagnosis. And the only way to really definitively diagnose Parkinson's is to do an autopsy still, which has yet to be a popular option.
I'm going to hold off on that.
Yeah, you're not alone on that. No.
So when I presented to you, when I came in here, what did you notice about the way I presented that said, oh, that?
Yeah, so it's... First thing that often I notice when people come in is walking from the waiting room that one foot is dragging a little bit behind the other one, or you're not moving that one arm quite as much as the other one. You'll notice the tremor, sort of even talking through from peripheral vision. You can see that the hand is shaking a little bit right now. The blinking rate is not quite as fast as one would expect.
That's cool.
Yeah, so little subtle things that you learn to pick up over time, and then the story that people tell as well. So you get the story, there's this tremor and it's happening when I'm relaxed, and then there's a bunch of what are called premotor symptoms that we ask about, such as losing your sense of smell and becoming constipated, starting to act out your dreams when you're asleep, that are supportive of a diagnosis of Parkinson's disease, but not definitive. And it's really the bringing it all together, the whole presentation, the whole package that we see that leads us to that diagnosis.
When that diagnosis, for me, it's like I didn't know anything about it. So then you go home and you begin to research, and then you start getting advice from everybody. Well, you got to do this, you got to do this, you got to do this, and you got to do this, and try boxing and try. It's overwhelming.
Absolutely.
And every time you go see, now I'm going to physio. Well, then you have to do this, and you should see this other person, and they want you to do this diet, and they want how do you, as a patient, how do we work through that?
I think there's a lot of with anything, there's a lot on the internet. Yeah. For one thing, and there's a lot of misinformation out there. There's a lot of old information. So I think finding a reliable source, so the Parkinson's Society of British Columbia, the Parkinson's Foundation, the Michael J. Fox Foundation, there's lots of very reputable organizations out there that have up-to-date information. So I think seeking out those organizations is very important. Obviously, speaking to your physician. In an ideal world, we would have more people and we would have much sooner follow-up, especially with newly diagnosed people to help answer a lot of those questions. And then and then some of it is a bit of trial and error and seeing what makes you feel better.
Well, some people are like, just try everything. I'm like, that's a lot.
And there are only so many hours in the day, right?
Well, it can like, they're like, well, don't let Parkinson's take over your life, but like, Parkinson's takes over your life.
Yes. You're absolutely right. I mean, it does. Everything is a little bit harder, and it's always there in whatever you do. And it is a challenging condition for that reason.
And then there's the things that happen, you're like, is that Parkinson's or is that just me?
Totally. And unfortunately, with a lot of those things, it could be Parkinson's, but it might not be. And part of my job as a Parkinson's specialist is to say, well, that could be your Parkinson's, but let's make sure it's not something else, because unfortunately, you're allowed to have more than one problem.
Right. So from your perspective, how important is, they talk about the gut health and the brain health, and like, have you found that connection yet?
I mean, we're working on, my colleague, Dr. Cresswell here in our group is working on finding that connection. There are certainly intriguing teasers that something may start in the gut or in the nose that sets off the process of Parkinson's disease. What we don't know yet is what to do about it. And but certainly, taking your probiotic isn't going to hurt you. But is it going to help? With that, we don't know yet.
What if you got diagnosed with Parkinson's today? What would you do? What would be the first thing you would do?
I would start exercising more, for sure. And I mean, beyond that, I would probably reevaluate my work-life balance a little bit and try to make sure that I'm ticking those items off the bucket list. I mean, if you have a lot of years, but the years have a tendency to get away from you. They tend to go by rather quickly.
That's the advice I get from people that are 10 years, 15 years in. They're like, I wish I would have traveled more.
Yes. Yeah. And you still can travel 10 to 15 years in. It just doesn't get any easier over time. And so I think you want to, if you want to go hike to Machu Picchu, sooner is better than later. You have to, I think you have to prioritize a little bit. And I think if you're younger and you're still working, then you have to look at your job and say, okay, I'm doing okay now. Where am I going to be at in 5 years? Where am I going to be at in 10 years? Do I need to scale back a bit? Do I need to make a career change? How can I support myself in my job and my life to succeed?
When I come in for my 6-month appointment, my checkup, what questions should I be asking you?
So I think any questions that are on your mind, you should ask. Those niggling things is, hey, is this thing my Parkinson's disease? Is how am I doing? I think anything that's really on your mind is what you should be asking. I think part of my job is sort of pulling out the important things in terms of how you're doing and where we can work together to make things better. But I think if anything that you're concerned about, if me or whoever your doctor is doesn't ask you about, I think those are the things to ask.
What do you look for in those meetings?
I look for how you're doing, how you're feeling. I look for anything unusual that suggests that, hey, maybe this isn't actually Parkinson's disease, that maybe this is one of the mimics of Parkinson's disease, because we can be fooled for quite a long time with Parkinson's disease. And so there's always a part of every visit that, are there any red flags? Could this be something different? Including, are things progressing more quickly than I would expect them to be? And I'm always sort of inquiring after people's exercise habits, because I think it helps.
If you were to run into Parkinson on the street, if it was a person, what would you say to it?
Several expletives probably would come to mind. Why you've got to be like that. I think we need to have a discussion about how we can make you go away, basically. So I think swearing would probably be the first thing that would come to my mind. But it would be a very challenging conversation, I suspect. Parkinson's is one of those, party guests that won't leave type of thing at 3:00 in the morning that is just sort of droning on and you want to get rid of. So I think whatever conversation it would not be pleasant.
Larry, it really amazes me how many good people there are working in this field of research, who don't actually have Parkinson's themselves, yet they have such a passion for this field.
Oh, yeah. And Dr. Squires, I mean, he's a great clinician. He actually doesn't do research. He is 100% just seeing patients. And some of the neurologists at UBC do half research, half patient. This guy is dedicated to just making people with Parkinson's feel better and have a better life.
It also amazes me, too, how far the technology and the research and our understanding of Parkinson's has come. I mean, even the doctor there talking about working on the possible connection between Parkinson's and gut health, or the importance of exercise.
Yeah, it's really amazing how many different little things we have to think about as people with Parkinson's of, okay, I got to worry about my diet, I got to worry about my exercise, and oh yeah, I better take my pill, and it's a lot of things to keep track of.
And these weren't necessarily things that we knew in years past. In fact, I had a really interesting conversation with Grace and Sandy, who are with Parkinson Canada, and they really made me realize that.
I'm Sandy Jones, and I am an information and referral associate.
And I'm Grace Ferrari, and I'm the Senior Manager of Education and Support at Parkinson Canada.
So we're really grateful to have Parkinson Canada as a partner for this podcast.
Yeah, and both these women have so much experience with Parkinson's disease.
First of all, Nick, you had to understand about me, I'm really old, okay? And computers are not part of my language, just so you know. I can email and that's it. I'm just putting it out there because I will date myself. I predate levodopa. That's my claim to fame.
You predate the med that is now being used, the number one medication that's now being used to treat Parkinson's patients.
Yes, when I was a student nurse back in the early 1960s, whenever a patient with Parkinson's was admitted to the hospital, we had nothing to offer. Nothing. Zip, nada, nothing. So that meant that even after having Parkinson's for 2 or 3 years, because in those days people didn't frequently go to the doctor unless they were like bleeding out or couldn't breathe, right?
Right.
So they literally were quite advanced before they would even seek medical intervention. So by the time they had had Parkinson's for usually 2 or 3 years and were admitted to the hospital, they were so stiff and frozen, we couldn't even seat them on a toilet. They didn't bend. They were automatically diapered. We had to carry them anywhere they wanted to go. So when I tell you that I have actually been privileged to witness the miracle that is levodopa, I'm not kidding.
Sandy, what has it been like to actually experience a medical breakthrough?
Well, I can tell you both from a professional, which I've just shared with you, perspective. So when in the late 60s, early 70s, we now had this miracle to offer people called levodopa. It truly was a miracle, and it brings a smile to my face. Well, every time I hear one of I call them they're like my kids, you know, these neurologists. They talk about levodopa being a miracle drug. They don't even know. They haven't witnessed it firsthand like I did. I had an aunt who had Parkinson's, and when I was in my teens and I would go to visit her, because of course she was in a nursing home because she needed, 24/7 care. She couldn't do anything for herself. She was bedridden. And then Dr. Lang here at Toronto Western Hospital asked if she would like to, because she went by ambulance to her appointments there, and he offered her to be on the first clinical trial of levodopa. If I tell you, she went from the aunt that I visited in bed or lying straight in one of those great big blue chairs beside her bed because she didn't bend, to the aunt that with assistance, because by this time her muscles had atrophied, we could get her up and I could take little walks with her. For the first time, I could hear her. She could speak. I could understand her. It was truly a miracle. So when people today sometimes complain about their symptoms or about their medication, I just smack them upside the head and say, you have no idea how lucky you are, how blessed you are, that now there's so much research and focus on Parkinson's and how that miraculous medication is allowing us to even have this conversation or allowing you to be in the room. As I said, from both a professional and a personal perspective, I am extremely passionate about Parkinson's, which is probably because why I'm still here after my best by date has come and gone a few times. But I'll be 73 next month, and I just love what I do.
Sandy, you spoke about some of the medical resources that are now available to people with Parkinson's, like levodopa. But Grace, when someone gets diagnosed, what kind of resources are available to them through Parkinson Canada?
Well, we've got our information and referral line. It's a 1-800 helpline, if you will, where people can access it across Canada, and they'll be able to get information, tips, if you will, tools, the experience from Sandy's perspective on how to best identify Parkinson's. They'll be able to get some information on how to treat Parkinson's, so healthcare professionals can access our information and continuing professional development, and also how to manage their Parkinson's symptoms.
And Larry, if anybody wants to reach out and contact Parkinson Canada, they can do so online, parkinson.ca, or call them toll-free from anywhere in Canada, 1-800-565-3000.
Oh, that's very cool. Thank you, Niki. Coming up on the next episode of When Life Gives You Parkinson's.
I am Larry's older brother.
Older brother.
Older sister.
Are you able to laugh about my Parkinson's yet?
It's not funny. It's just not.
What worries you the most?
I have this picture of you doing the Superman running down the street trying to catch a bus. And I know that's not an everyday occurrence, but it's like, holy cow, that's Larry's life right now.
I don't remember exactly what I was doing, but I can remember first is like, wow.
I couldn't remember how I heard, and I think Mom called me before I got your text.
Sitting on the couch in my living room. Tears just started coming down my face, like they just did.
I was aware something was going on. I don't think we knew enough of the details. It was an eye-opening experience. It was something that I didn't ever expect that was what would happen to any of us.
Thanks for listening. Take a moment to subscribe to this podcast on Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, or wherever you're listening to this. And while you're there, give our show a rating and feel free to comment.
You can also engage with us on social media, ask questions, share stories, comment on an episode. It's easy. Just search at Parkinson's Pod on Facebook, Twitter, or Instagram.
Keep positive.
Keep exercising.
And keep listening.
We'll talk to you next time.